He stepped onto the plane with confidence, ticket in hand, ready to enjoy the comfort he had rightfully paid for. But moments later, that confidence was stripped away, not by turbulence in the skies, but by prejudice in the cabin. A flight attendant decided he didn't belong in first class. Humiliation in front of strangers was supposed to end the story. Instead, it was only the beginning. Because what happened next didn't just shock the passengers on that plane, it stunned the entire airline industry. How could a single moment of injustice flip the balance of power so completely? For most of his life, Marcus believed that hard work could open doors. He had built a reputation as a sharp businessman, a man who carried himself with quiet dignity. On this particular morning, he was heading to a conference, an opportunity that had taken years of persistence to reach. The ticket in his hand wasn't a gift or a favor. He had earned it, every cent, every mile. The airport was bustling as he walked through the terminal, briefcase in one hand, boarding pass in the other. Families hurried to gates, pilots exchanged nods, and flight attendants wheeled carts past him. To Marcus, it was all routine. He had flown dozens of times before, but this flight felt different. It was more than just travel, it was a milestone, a chance to reflect on how far he had come. As he stepped into the cabin, he felt the quiet prestige of first class. Wide seats, calm lighting, the hushed whispers of passengers settling in. For Marcus, it wasn't about luxury, it was about belonging. He had worked for this place, and in that moment, he allowed himself to feel it. But what he didn't know was that the same seat that symbolized success would soon become a stage for humiliation. A single decision, rooted not in policy, but in prejudice, was about to change everything. At first, everything seemed normal. Marcus slid his briefcase under the seat, adjusted his jacket, and leaned back with a quiet breath. But the peace didn't last long. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the flight attendant pause, her gaze lingering on him a little too long. She checked her tablet, frowned, then walked briskly toward him. "Sir, I think you're in the wrong seat," she said flatly, her tone more accusation than question. Marcus calmly handed over his boarding pass. The ticket clearly showed first class, his name printed in bold. The attendant glanced at it, then back at him, her frown deepening. Instead of apologizing, she leaned closer and repeated herself, this time louder, as if volume could erase the truth. Passengers nearby shifted in their seats, watching the exchange unfold like silent judges. Marcus felt the heat rising in his chest. He wasn't just being questioned, he was being doubted, his very presence treated as a mistake. He explained politely, but the attendant's expression hardened. Within moments, a second crew member arrived, and together they stood over him, insisting he move to economy. The whispers around him grew louder. A man in the next row pretended to check his phone but kept his camera angled toward Marcus. Others looked away, uncomfortable, unwilling to intervene. The humiliation burned deeper with every passing second. He had done nothing wrong, yet here he was, cornered, accused, erased in plain sight. Marcus could feel the weight of history pressing down on this moment. He knew this wasn't about a seat, it was about who they believed deserved to sit there. About centuries of being told to step aside, to accept less, to remain silent. But Marcus had promised himself long ago, silence was not an option. Finally, under the piercing eyes of strangers, the attendants forced him out of the seat. His briefcase was shoved back into his arms as if it carried shame instead of hard-earned success. With every step toward the economy cabin, Marcus felt the sting of injustice cut deeper. He had paid for his place, yet it was being stripped from him with casual cruelty. The humiliation should have ended there, but it didn't. It followed him as he sat cramped in the narrow seat, knees pressed against the tray table, the memory of first class still fresh. Around him, the buzz of conversation seemed sharper, snickers, whispers, fragments of judgment that twisted like knives. Marcus stared at the seatbelt buckle in his lap, his hands trembling, not from fear, but from anger. This wasn't just another indignity to swallow and move on. Something inside him shifted, a quiet resolve hardening like steel. They wanted him small, diminished, invisible. But what they had done instead was awaken something powerful. And before this flight would even touch the ground, Marcus's response would rewrite the story entirely. The humiliation still burned in Marcus's chest as the plane cut through the clouds. But instead of letting anger consume him, he focused it, sharpened it into something stronger. Years of setbacks, countless moments of being told no because of who he was, all pressed into this single insult. And he decided, this time, he wouldn't just endure it. He would answer it. As the flight dragged on, Marcus sat in silence, his mind racing faster than the jet engines outside. He thought about the years he'd spent building businesses from the ground up, about the investments he had carefully nurtured, about the connections he had forged. The flight attendants had seen only a man they believed didn't belong. What they didn't know was that Marcus had the means, and the will, to turn their dismissal into his triumph. When the plane finally touched down, Marcus moved with quiet determination. He didn't confront the attendants again. Their ignorance wasn't worth another word. Instead, he made a call. Within minutes, his network was mobilized. Numbers were exchanged, meetings scheduled, possibilities opened. The airline that had treated him as less than human would soon discover that they had underestimated the wrong man. What began as a single insult snowballed into something far greater. Negotiations moved quickly. Marcus wasn't just buying stock, he was buying leverage. His influence spread through boardrooms, through contracts, until the very company that had tried to strip him of dignity now had to answer to him. And when the deal was finalized, the announcement stunned the industry. The man who had been forced out of first class was now the one signing paychecks. The same airline that once humiliated him had, unknowingly, handed him the stage for his greatest victory. The attendants may never have imagined their actions could ripple this far. But Marcus knew. Injustice has a way of igniting change, and this time it lit a fire that could not be put out. Marcus's victory wasn't measured in luxury seats or champagne glasses. It wasn't about revenge, either. It was about reclaiming dignity in a world that had tried again and again to deny it. When the news broke that he had secured ownership in the very airline that once humiliated him, the headlines weren't just about business, they were about justice. But Marcus knew his story was only one thread in a much larger fabric. For every triumph like his, there were countless others who faced discrimination without the resources to fight back. Every boarding pass, every office, every street corner carried the same question: who is seen as worthy, and who is not? The flight attendants likely never imagined the weight of their actions. To them, it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, something small. But for Marcus, and for millions who have endured similar treatment, it was proof of a harsher truth, that racism often hides in plain sight, dressed as procedure or policy, but cutting just as deep. By turning humiliation into empowerment, Marcus didn't just change his own story. He forced the world to confront the quiet injustice that far too many accept as ordinary. His success became a symbol that no matter how often dignity is denied, strength can rise from it. And so the question lingers long after his story ends: how many more Marcuses must be humiliated before real change takes flight? How many more mistakes before the world stops pretending not to see? Because until every person can take their seat without fear, without judgment, without being told they don't belong, the journey toward justice remains unfinished.